Guys, it is almost game day. I am itching for it. This feels like the slowest week ever. It's harder to get work done. It's harder to get any daily task done right now. I'm sure you all feel the same way. We've got that itch for football. And it's Thursday morning right now, so we get that first appetizer serving tonight. Unless you count the little tidbit we got last week, this Thursday has the first real game, so we're calling this the start of the season. But I had a few final thoughts going into this 2023 Texas A&M season. At this point, I've put out like 23 videos to preview this season, so there's not much that I haven't already said. But I want to give you a couple of my final thoughts heading into this first game, and this is kind of what I'll be looking out for these first couple of weeks of the A&M season. And then I want to give you a couple of my season predictions on the greater landscape of college football. So let's get right into it. But first, if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing. Subscribe, it helps so much. I appreciate you all. Let's go. So the first thing I'm going to be looking for in this initial matchup and going forward is going to be this offensive line. I'm sure all of you will be looking at it too. Last year, it was assignment breakdowns, not being able to handle any kind of blitzes or twists. It didn't really matter the personnel until we had consistent personnel late in the year. You had the same lineup go out for a couple games in a row, and then finally versus LSU, they actually looked like a cohesive offensive line. So I'm going to be looking for that exact same performance, but to start the year this year. I know there are some nagging injuries on that offensive line with Reuben Fothery, Bryce Foster. Not sure if either are going to start this first game, but at this point, any of those backups, they have a full year of experience within this system at least and have practiced throughout the entirety of fall camp. I don't think there's any reason whoever takes the field first in this offensive line can't have a productive performance versus New Mexico. And then going into Miami, I expect that can continue through the first few games of the year until this thing settles in, the lineup is set. I don't know how much it's going to change going forward. I just want to see a lack of assignment breakdowns. I want them to handle these twists. Jimbo said New Mexico's going to be twisting like crazy, so it'll be a good little test versus maybe a little bit lower level personnel to get that honed in. Aside from that on the offense, I'm looking at these receivers at the quarterback. Obviously, we want Connor Wigman to continue that good rapport he was building with this receiver core in that LSU game late in the year last year. Evan Stewart, Moose Muhammad, Noah Thomas. We know those three are going to be involved. We got to see Anais get worked into that chemistry. He hasn't caught a pass from Connor yet in real game action. So that'll be fun to see. I think we're all excited about that. But then I'm really curious as to who's going to be the next receiver in. I'm sure it's going to be Ja'Day Walker, the tall, talented, camp standout transfer who should have a role on this team as one of the rotational receivers. And then do Tease or Cottrell make their way into the game before it's backup time? I'm really curious about that. I'm sure they're going to need some sort of rotation there, especially with the tight end room slightly thinning out with Donovan not part of the team this year, unfortunately, because of that ACL tear. I want to talk about tight ends as well. And I want to say I'm really glad we have Max Wright, because as hyped as we are about this tight end room, as excited as we are for Theo Orstrom, Jake Johnson, even Jaden Platt, there's a lack of experience there. There's a lack of big game production. Because Donovan Green was really good last year. He was a major safety valve. He had huge play after huge play, a lot of third down conversions, touchdowns. He was always there, just as a tight end always has been there in Jimbo Fisher's system. Since he's been at A&M, it started with Jay Sternberger, then obviously 3 years of Wademeyer, and then Donovan Green. Very important position. Max Wright knows this offense. He can go out there and run the plays. He might not give you that upside, but he gives you stability. And it'll give whichever other tight end is going to emerge this year the time to fall in the line. I'm really curious if we're going to see any of Theo Mello Orstrom. He showed out in some scrimmages this camp, as the reports have indicated. He looks really good to the eye test. Is he going to play a lot? Is he going to have a major role in this team? We hope he's good enough to do so, because you can't teach what he brings, which is that size and athleticism for that size. Really exciting player. I wonder if this is the year he breaks through, or if they're going to keep that thing limited to Jake Johnson and Max Wright. I know Jake's going to play. We need to see it pan out. I just want to see it happen. I'm very confident in these players on paper, but it hasn't played out yet. So I'm really glad Max is there just to stabilize that thing, especially with Donovan gone. Now, running backs, I'm not going to say much. I'm excited about seeing all three play. I think we're going to see a lot of all three play. Who's going to emerge? Both Amari and Le'Veon had great moments last year. They both look very promising. Obviously, Ruben Owens with all the talent in the world. Going to be a fun running back room. Defensive side of the ball, the main thing I'm looking for is havoc on that defensive line. I want to see that D-line living in the backfield. Last year, the D-line was good, but they weren't great at getting any kind of pressure on the quarterback. They weren't great at blowing up plays. And then gap assignment by linebackers was subpar. So in that front seven, gap assignment, and then blowing up some plays. We got to see some players in the backfield. We need to see just some defensive ends win some one-on-ones and get a pass rush from a single player. Fadil Diggs, Eni White, Malik Silla, LT Overton, these guys need to get into the backfield. And I'm curious, I'm pretty sure we're going to see Fadil Diggs start. I'm curious who the second edge rusher will be. Late in the season last year, LSU, we saw a lot of Malik Silla actually get some really, really good pass rush. Is he going to be the next man in, or is it going to be Eni White, who probably played more last year, even though he was hurt at times? Or is LT Overton moving into that true pass rusher build to where he's the guy they're plugging in there? I'm sure we're going to see all of them. I'm just curious who we're going to see the most. And I'm confident that this D-line will improve on the pass rush. I actually think that you're going to see a really good interior line pass rush from this team, relatively speaking. I think Walter Nolan can be a great interior pass rusher, especially now that he's leaned up. You can move him around. He's going to be super quick compared to some of those guards and centers across the league. I think he has a really good chance to get some sacks from the inside. Same goes for Shamar Turner, very athletic for his size, and even McKinley Jackson. The interior of this D-line should be absolutely beastly. I just want to see that edge really emerge and become a consistent factor on this defense. And then obviously, who's going to be the corner next to Tyreek Chappelle, or across the field from Tyreek Chappelle? Who's that other outside corner? We thought it's Javen Thomas, DeBerry. Did Grimes have a late push? Sam McCall, Deuce Harmon, Bobby Taylor? We don't know. And is there going to be a rotation out there? I'm sure there is. Who's in on that rotation? So that's something else I'm looking at. It looks like the star, nickel, safeties, that star is kind of that hybrid linebacker position. I think that's one of the strongest areas on this team. This team's strengths is going to be in its passing game. It's going to be in its safeties and that star nickel position. It's going to be on that D-line. Now, we just need everything else to kind of be good enough. And I think those areas alone are good enough to make this team a great team. So, guys, a lot of stuff to look out for early in the year. And I'm not just talking about the game versus New Mexico. I'm talking about these first 2 to 3 weeks. These are all things that I will be looking at. What about you guys? What are y'all looking at? I'm pretty sure I covered everything that everyone's curious about. But is there anything that I missed that you guys are curious about? Now, I wanted to make a couple predictions here. I wanted to bury it late into this video so no one sees it. And if you are still here, okay, I'm going to make these predictions. I'm going to predict the Heisman, and I'm going to give you my 4 playoff teams. I'm just going to say my 4 playoff teams. I'm not going to explain it too much. Most of this is a gut feeling. It's all a guess anyway. You're playing the lottery here. Anything can happen. I played it safe with my first 3. My 4th is definitely a wild card. So I have Georgia winning the SEC, making it in, of course, yet again. Michigan, who I think is an absolutely dominant team by roster, by returning production. Super easy schedule, and I think they win the round robin that is the Big Ten between them, Penn State, and Ohio State. I think Michigan comes out of the conference and wins the conference. But then I also think Ohio State makes it in with only 1 loss to Michigan on the year. And yes, I know that's a tougher prediction to make now that we've seen Notre Dame in that first game where they look pretty damn good. And Ohio State travels to Notre Dame in week 4. That's a game that we need to all watch. That's a very, very... It carries heavy implications on the year. How good is Notre Dame? How good is Ohio State? I mean, those are all big-time questions at this point in the year. But I do have Ohio State making it in on my 4th team. Total wild card, I acknowledge it. Washington. I just have a feeling about these receivers and this quarterback in that conference for them to be the one that comes out on top with only 1 loss. I do not think USC comes out of this second half of their schedule unscathed. If you haven't Googled USC's schedule, go Google it and tell me if you think that team with that defense is going to come out of that second half of the season unscathed. They're not. Pretty confident about that. And then my first team out, I know you guys are going to hate this. I think it's Texas. I think Texas, they're a 1 or 2 loss team this year based on the schedule that they have. And I know they slip up to games all the time, but I think that their roster is just so head and shoulders above the rest of the Big 12. They can lose to Bama and then win that thing out. I think this is the year that they want to make noise because things get a lot more difficult for them next year and going forward. We all know that. So I think they're going to want to make a name for themselves in this last year in the Big 12. And then my Heisman pick. This is one I've been going back and forth on. I've been Caleb Williams for quite a while now. I'm going to make it align with my playoff pick. I'm going with Penix. I'm going with the quarterback out of Washington, Michael Penix, with all of his weapons, all of his running ability, everything that he has in that conference with such little high-end defenses. I think he has a chance to have a hell of a year. I think there's going to be some fatigue, voter fatigue with Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams makes it to New York. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. makes it to New York. But I think Michael Penix ends up winning this thing. So those are just a couple picks I wanted to make on the year. Y'all obviously know I have LSU winning the West with one loss in SEC play. Guys, what are your predictions for the playoffs? What are your Heisman predictions? This is all just for fun because it's all a guess. Anything and everything can happen in college football, and that is the beauty of this sport. So, guys, I'm so looking forward to this season. I feel like it's a really good one in store for the Ags. Gonna watch this game with all hands on deck, and then I will be reporting in with you guys minutes after the game concludes. I will see you Saturday night. Thanks, and gig 'em.